garment factory collapsed, killing more than 1,000.
Clashes between clothes factory workers and riot police in Cambodia.
Last November, 112 people were killed in another major factory fire. 30,000 Chinese workers have been on strike.
Garment workers in Bangladesh paying the price for cheap clothing.
Movies like this definitely have a role to play in terms of creating awareness of a problem. I think that a lot of people who, and certainly, hopefully, the mass consumers, when they see this, you know, they will think twice about where their clothes come from and how they're made. And not only the eco-sustainability issue, but really, I mean, we're here in a human rights festival, and I think that, you know, we shouldn't lose sight, because there's so many issues that are covered in the movie that we shouldn't lose sight of the workers in the Rana Plaza, which is really where it comes down to in the end. I mean, there's a lot of problems along the way. Yeah, the cotton and the, you know, there's a lot of problems that are brought into the movie, but I really think we should not lose sight of the human rights of the workers that we're talking about.
When everything is concentrated on making profits, what you see is that human rights, the environment, workers' rights get lost.
My God, we can do better than this.
I do believe, and we do believe, that education is extremely important. And we try to work together with the industry on research and education to build programs that will raise awareness and find solutions. I think that's one way to contribute, one of the many that needs to be done to address it from a systemic and comprehensive and scientific point of view.
We communicate who we are through clothing. It is fundamentally a part of what we wish to communicate about ourselves.
We used to have a system, a fashion system. That has absolutely nothing to do with the fashion industry today. It has been reinvented.
It's based on materialism. The problem is that comes at a really high price.
If my children learn that it's not necessary to buy, you know, $8 clothes many times a month, that's already a very good thing. But I think it's also creating consciousness and activism, because there are many steps along the way. There's education, as Michela has been saying, there's activism. We need to get involved with governments to hold them accountable. So everybody in their own way can do something, because it's a very long process, the supply chain, and it's not only the heads of the companies. We're all accountable to some extent, so we all need to think about and there's many ways of getting involved and doing something about this.
Well, the promise of globalization was that it was going to be a win-win, that consumers in the rich world would get cheaper goods and people in the poorer parts of the world would get jobs, and that those jobs would give them an opportunity to work their way out of poverty.
This enormous, rapacious industry that is generating so much profit, why is it that it is unable to support millions of its workers properly?
The actual business model is completely unsustainable. Unless you change that model, you can't change anything.
Globalization, of course, is much more rapid. Things happen much more quickly. Profit margins people are pushing on these things, so there's a lot of pressure. But I think that, you know, there's many countries, there are many international agreements, and many countries. I don't want to pick on Bangladesh, because, you know, there was Cambodia, there's Indonesia, there's many countries that have signed on to these international agreements. And I think that, you know, I was saying that there has to be some kind of accountability. There's no global enforcement. You see, there's no global enforcement, so that's where citizens really have to take up, and that's where activists become very important to make sure that the governments, you know, and that's where tragedy like Rana Plaza hopefully can change things a little bit, because even in Bangladesh, the the activists will hopefully be able to say, okay, well, the governments have surely signed on to treaties that say that everybody should have decent working wages, but you know, there's nobody to enforce this in the European Union and in the United States, and there's all sorts of safeguards which they don't have in developing countries. And in international organizations, we're trying to help that happen, but we also need to be able to push governments. And last but not least, there's a lot of corruption that goes into these issues, right? Where people say that they're doing something and then they get paid under the table and they're not doing it, you know.
Oh, definitely. I think more and more there are people whose consciousness has been raised and who are genuinely preoccupied with the issue and who make it their work, their profession to address these issues. I personally know some fantastic people who work in the industry, even here in Ticino, who are trying to do and are doing a lot in this sphere. And I think it is they're not the pioneers, but they are the ones who are carrying on some of the pioneers' work and who will help make this a systemic approach. That's what we need throughout the industry. I think we have people like that, and I think that's definitely something we have to remember, that there are people working towards that goal within the industry itself.